Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Commander's Forge. My name is Andy Bentley, and the Forge is an area for me to talk about magic, Commander, and anything else while we try and get this whole mental health thing in order. Now, this week I do want to talk a little bit about Secret Lair, but that's not really the main thing I'm here to talk about this week. And I just kind of want to jump into it. I'm not a fan of the way they're doing Secret Lairs now. With the chance that everything can sell out super fast. Like, if you saw the Hatsune Miku, that sold out so fast. And I don't like the idea of that. Now, a way I think they could still do this is have X amount that are pre-made, so like the first however many people that order it can get it, and then the rest the way that it has been, where it's, you order it and then they have to print it and ship it out. That, A, sounds like the smartest way to do it, and B, would make them more money. You think that's what they would want to do. But regardless, I looked through the secret lairs that are up right now, and there's really only one I'm even remotely interested in. And that's the one making fun of Instagram with goblins. So it's a brash taunter, goblin chieftain, goblin ringleader, goblin welder, and Mog war marshal. So just going down the line, brash taunter is 4 and a red. It is a 1/1. I do like how on the art it has their stats as a thumbs up and a heart. So, yeah. And then for like the description of the picture, it has, their username and then like the description that you would find on an Instagram post. So for Brash Taunter, it's an indestructible. Then it has a little slash mark, and whenever it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target. And then it says more, because how, like on a description, if it's too long, it would have the more tab so that you could see the rest of it. But then it has comments from other cards in the set. So on Brash Taunter, it has Goblin Chieftain saying, "You're so hot, fight me, lol." And Thrun the Last Troll, skip leg day again, with a question mark. And we'll circle back to Thrun in a minute. The next one, Goblin Chieftain, is 1 red for a 2/2. Haste. Other goblin creatures you control get +1/+1 have haste. And then it has hashtag too strong, hashtag too fast. Just funny. On his, the comments are from Goblin Welder with hashtag blessed. And Thrun the Last Troll with hashtag gross. After that, we have Goblin Ringleader, 3 and a red for a 2/2 with haste. When it enters the battlefield, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You can put goblins into your hand. But again, it has that more, because you can't actually see it. On his, we have Goblin Chieftain saying, "Sweet filter, hashtag gob mob." And then Thrun the Last Troll saying, "Lol, glad I wasn't there." After that, we have Goblin Welder, single red for a 1/1. Choose target artifact player controls and target artifact card that player's graveyard. If, and then again, it has the more, but you can swap them. On his, we have Brash Taunter saying that ride is a beast, because that literally shows Goblin Welder in like a motor car. And then Thrun the Last Troll saying it looks like an old ashtray, to be honest. And finally, we have Mog War Marshal, 1 in a red for a 1/1. It has Echo for 1 in a red. When it enters the battlefield or dies, you create a 1/1 goblin. And then it has Goblin Ringleader saying, "Love a hashtag ambush shelfie." And then Thrun the Last Troll saying, "So staged." I like the way these ones look, art-wise. I do still enjoy goblins, even though my goblin deck is not together at this point. I still have the pieces of it if I ever want to put it back together. I don't know. I don't want to do mono red goblins again, you know? Like, Krenko's great, and Muxus is great, but I'd rather have, a couple more colors, or another color at least. But now, getting back to the comments on there, and each one having Thrun the last troll, every secret lair comes with, like, a special extra card, and I'm 90% sure this one's going to come with Thrun the last troll, just because, he's on every card, basically. But yeah, that's really all I care about, secret lair wise. And yeah, I do want to talk real quick about something that I have going on at work. And that's a walking challenge that they do basically every year. And this year I was volunteered by my cousin. He put me in, and I was like, yeah, whatever. But I was looking into getting more into shape, and a lot of that started with trying to get more walks in. And this really just kind of forced me into it. And I'm kind of okay with that. But I am extremely exhausted, and my legs feel like jelly every day. So currently, it started like the first Sunday of the month, and it goes until the last day of the month. So currently, I'm at a total of 220,216 steps for the month. I've been trying, emphasis on trying, to get more steps every day. So if I go back to the first day of this, which was Sunday, May 5th, that was a very light day. I only had about 25,000 steps, but that's mostly because I was at home doing laundry, washing dishes, and doing stuff around the house. The Monday after that, I got 8,500, which is about the average I get on a normal working day, just, by running around at work and then doing stuff when I get home. But then I thought, well, I can do better. So on that Tuesday, I had 11,700. And then on Wednesday, I did 12,200. And then that Thursday, I did 13,100. Then I did 14,100. Then 15,100. That Sunday, after that Saturday, I did 15,000. I couldn't quite push myself to the 16,000. But then on Monday, I did get to 17,000. On Tuesday, I got to 19,000. That Wednesday, I got to 20,000. Thursday, I got to 24,000. Friday, I got to 25,500. And yesterday, I got 20,954. Mostly because I wasn't feeling well. I did not get any walking done in the morning. And I still had to, go do my grocery shopping. So, I only had, 4,000 steps by, I think it was 3 o'clock at that point. So, I did push myself, and by 9 o'clock, I was feeling really nauseous, and I decided I was just going to call it. So, spoiler alerts, I am recording this early Sunday morning, and it will go out at my normal time on Sunday. And as I sit here recording this, I'm currently at 310 steps, and the goal for today is 27,000 steps. Will it happen? I don't know. Because once I'm done here, I have to go make the breakfast wraps that I make for myself that I freeze. I have to go prep stuff for my lunches for the week. And getting a walk in this morning might be rough. But I'm going to do my best. And all of that is to circle back to I'm trying to make myself better. Better at keeping at stuff, better at moving, better in general. The podcast is here to help me get my thoughts straight, and I now have something that's on the physical side keeping me on the straight and narrow because, well, yes, I do have an exercise bike. It's really rough on my knees. So that's it. That's really all I had to say here. And when I get back, we'll be taking a look at a very ventureful deck. And I'll be right back. And we are back. Now, today we're going to talk about Sephrus of the Hidden Ways. Sephrus is esper, so white, blue, black, for a 2/3 human wizard. Whenever one or more creatures are put into your graveyard from anywhere, venture into the dungeon. This ability triggers only once each turn. And then she has an ability that says whenever you complete a dungeon, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So I built this deck from the pre-con, and when I was building it, I really wanted to focus on, well, at the time, what was like the two main abilities that get you into a dungeon. So that was venturing into the dungeon and taking the initiative. But I also wanted ways that would trigger Sephrus. So to start off, I have a few cards that care about going into the dungeon or completing dungeons. First up, we have Dungeon Delver. Single blue for an enchantment. It's a background. Commander creatures you own have room abilities of dungeons you own trigger an additional time. Which is just good. Extra triggers means extra value. Our next creature also does that. Hama Pashar, Ruin Seeker. 1, a white and a blue for a 2/3 human wizard. Room abilities of dungeons you own trigger an additional time. After that, we have Imuin, Mystic Trickster for 2 and a blue for a 2/3 human rogue wizard with Ward 2. At the beginning of your end step, if you have the initiative, draw a card. Draw another card if you've completed a dungeon. If she was your commander, you could choose a background. And last up, kind of in this category, we have Safana, Kalimport Cutthroat, 2 and a black for a 3/2 human rogue with Menache. At the beginning of your end step, if you have the initiative, create a treasure token. Create 3 of those tokens instead if you've completed a dungeon. And again, if she was your commander, you could choose a background. So let's get into the stuff that cares about Sephrus and her abilities, and then we'll move into like the venturing into the dungeon and the initiative. One of the biggest things we really want with Sephrus is reusability. And for us, that starts with Reassembling Skeleton. 1 and a black for a 1/1 Skeleton Warrior. And it has 1 and a black, return Reassembling Skeleton from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. This is bread and butter, kind of like something she wants, right? After that, we have Persistent Specimen, which is a single black for a 1/1 skeleton. It has for 2 and a black, return Persistent Specimen from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. And then we have the slower version, which is Clattering Augur. 1 and a black for a 1/1 skeleton shaman. Clattering Augur can't block. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card and lose a life. And for 2 black, return Chattering Augur from your graveyard to your hand. So again, more expensive, but has the added ability of drawing new cards. Things we like. One of the core things you'll see as we go through like the venturing into the dungeon is a lot of things trigger on entering the battlefield. So I wanted things like Far Traveler, which is another one of those backgrounds. It's 2 and a white. Commander creatures you own have, at the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target tapped creature you control, then return to the battlefield under its owner's control. We also want to be able to get stuff out of our graveyard. So looking at things like Unburial Rites, which is 4 and a black for a sorcery. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it has flashback for 3 and a white, so you get to, use it twice. But then we also just want to trigger on stuff that we have in play. So we have things like Displace, 2 and a blue. Instant, exile up to 2 target creatures you control, then return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. These also double as ways to, dodge removal. And the other one is Ghostly Flicker, 2 and a blue. Instant, exile up to 2 target artifacts, creatures, and or lands you control, then return those cards to the battlefield under your control. So it's, again, a great way to protect Sephiroth or just trigger something that cares about entering the battlefield. Now, we're going to move into the venturing side of what's in the deck. And that's going to start with a couple of non-creatures. The first one being Precipitous Drop. 2 and a black for an enchantment aura. Enchant a creature. When it enters the battlefield, venture into the dungeon. Enchanted creature gets -2/-2, but if you've completed a dungeon, it gets -5/-5 instead. So this is just utility and entering the dungeon. The deck has, I believe, 2 counterspells, but one of them ventures into the dungeon, and that is Bar the Gate. 2 and a blue for an instant, counter target creature or planeswalker spell, and venture into the dungeon. Alright, let's get into things that care about entering the battlefield first. Creature-wise, we have Radiant Solar, which is 5 and a white for a 3/6 angel. It has flying and lifelink. Whenever it or another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, venture into the dungeon, or you can pay a white, discard the Radiant Solar, venture into the dungeon, and gain 3 life. So, if it's in play and we have things enter the battlefield, we venture into the dungeon. If Sephiroth is in play and we pay a white, discard this, and venture into the dungeon, and then we also venture into the dungeon for Sephiroth. And again, if that completes a dungeon, we can return Radiant Solar from the graveyard after discarding it, and then venture into the dungeon again. So, lots of fun, tricksy things you can do with that. Next up, we have another commander of mine, Nadar, Selfless Paladin. 3 and a white for a 3/3 Dragon Knight with Vigilance. Whenever Nadar, Selfless Paladin enters the battlefield or attacks, venture into the dungeon. Other creatures you control get +1/+1 as long as you've completed a dungeon. Alright, next up we have Barrowin of Clan Under, 2 white and a black for a 3/3 Dwarf Cleric. Whenever Barrowin of Clan Under enters the battlefield, venture into the dungeon. Whenever Barrowin of Clan Under attacks, return up to 1 target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield if you've completed a dungeon. So again, more ways to buy back creatures that we want to put into our graveyard. And the 3 or less does hit a reasonable amount of stuff in the deck, just not all of it. You know what I mean? Alright, next up we have Clattering Skeletons, which is 3 and a black for a 4/3 skeleton. When it dies, you venture into the dungeon. And then, if Sephiroth sees it, you venture into the dungeon again. So, again, it just helps double up on her triggers. And then we have the Midnight Pathlighter. 2, a white and a blue, for a 2/3 human wizard. Creatures you control can't be blocked except by legendary creatures. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, venture into the dungeon. So, this pulls double duty. It makes our stuff incredibly hard to block, and just think of the way you can machine gun your way through a dungeon if you have 5 or 6 creatures hit, right? There is more, but I don't want this relatively quick deck to take more than like 10 minutes, you know what I mean? But that said, we will move into the last class of cards that run this deck. And that's the things that take the initiative. Starting with the Tomb of Horrors Adventurer. For 5 and a blue, you get a 4/4 Elf Monk. When it enters the battlefield, you take the initiative. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, copy it. If you've completed a dungeon, copy that spell twice. You may choose new targets for the copy. The fact that this lets you copy creatures is the nicest thing here, because creature tokens still hit the graveyard when they die, triggering Sephiroth. Ravenloft Adventurer, 3 and a black for a 3/4 human rogue assassin. When Ravenloft Adventurer enters the battlefield, you take the initiative. If a creature an opponent controls would die, you instead exile it and put a hit counter on it. And whenever Ravenloft Adventurer attacks, if you've completed a dungeon, the defending player loses 1 life for each card they own in exile with a hit counter on it. Maybe not as powerful as the Tomb of Horrors Adventurer, and I still don't have the white one, which is the White Plume Adventurer. I do need to get one for this deck, but I've kind of put myself in a buying ban for a little bit while I work on paying some other bills off. But moving right along, we have the Aarakocra Sneak, which is 3 and a blue for a 1/4 bird rogue with flying. When it enters the battlefield, you take the initiative. Goliath Paladin, 4 and a white for a 3/6 giant knight with vigilance. When it enters the battlefield, take the initiative. Feywild Caretaker for 4 and a blue for a 3/4 orc wizard. When it enters the battlefield, you take the initiative, and at the beginning of your end step, if you have the initiative, you make a 1/1 blue fairy dragon creature token with flying. The Trailblazer's Torch is a 4 mana equipment. When it enters the battlefield, you take the initiative. Whenever the equipped creature becomes blocked, it deals 2 damage to each creature blocking it, and it equips for 1. And finally, we have the Undercellar Sweep, which is 4 and a white for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you take the initiative. Whenever you attack, if you or a player you're attacking has the initiative, you create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens that are tapped and attacking. And that, in a nutshell, is Sephiroth. The main goal of the deck is to just get through as many dungeons as possible. Use those dungeons to, rip out lands, rip out creatures. Like, going through, looking at the dungeons. My favorite dungeon is the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, which the first step is gain a life, the second step is scry 1, then it's either make a treasure or target creature can't attack until your next turn. Then it's scry 2 and either exile the top 2 cards of your library as you may play them, or create 2 1/1 black skeleton creature tokens. Finally, scry 3, followed by draw 3 cards and reveal them. You may cast one of them without paying its mana cost. It's my favorite dungeon to go through just because you get so much card selection in there. It can accelerate you when you get to the third one, and then scry 2, cool. I don't want either of these, they go to the bottom. If I'm on the slower plan, I'll make 2 1/1s. If I'm not, and I need to dig for a land, I'll exile the 2 cards. Then scrying 3, at this point, we want to make sure we're putting lands and anything non-impactful on the bottom to try and hit something good with the draw 3 trigger. I guess I should also talk about the initiative. So, the initiative is whenever 1 or more creatures a player controls deals combat damage to you, they take the initiative. And whenever you take the initiative, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have the initiative, venture into the Undercity. So, the way venturing into the Undercity works is if you are not actively in a dungeon, you enter the Undercity. The first one gets a basic land card into your hand. The second step is either scry 2 or put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. The third one, depending on which one you went to, for the 2 counters, you can either have target player lose 5 life or go to creature. For the scry 2, it's either create a treasure or go to creature. The next step after that is again split, so if you had them lose 5 life or the goad, you can draw a card. If you made the token or goad, you can create a 4/1 black skeleton creature token with menace, and then they both lead to the last one, which is reveal the top 10 cards of your library. Put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield with 3 +1/+1 counters on it. It gains hexproof until your next turn, and then shuffle. Then we have the other 2 dungeons that I really don't ever go into, even though I could complete them much faster. Lost Mines of Fendelver starts with scry 1, and that turns into create a 1/1 red goblin creature token or create a treasure token. From the 1/1 side, you can either put a counter on a creature, or each opponent loses 1 life, you gain 1 life. From the treasure token, you either have each opponent lose 1 life, you gain 1 life, or target creature gets a -4, -0 until your next turn. And the last one that all 3 of those lead to is draw a card. Not bad, but clearly not one that impacts enough of the board that I typically go into. Same with the last one, Tomb of Annihilation. Each player loses 1 life, and then there's one side that is called Oubliette. Discard a card and sacrifice an artifact, a creature, and a land. So, it's a heavy fee, but it makes it a 3-step dungeon. On the other side, there's each player loses 2 life unless they discard a card, followed by each player loses 2 life unless they sacrifice an artifact, a creature, or a land. And the last one is create the Atropol, a legendary 4/4 black god horror creature token with Death Touch. And yeah, that's kind of it. I do think I'm going a little long here, so I'm going to wrap this up quickly. I hope you all have a good time, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening. All of my links can be found in my link tree in the description below. I would like to thank Ian Foss and Cody Mulpey of the band The Crypt for allowing me to use music for my opening and ending, along with Nate and Erica Jacobs for making my original logo. And I would also like to thank Christina McNichol for creating my new logo. And I'll see you next time.